Episode was fire, and I agree. And we actually recorded the conversation live in front of inside my Hello Betty membership. And let me just tell you that the ladies were going nuts for weeks after we recorded that. And there she is. There's
Hey
my friend.
guys, hi Patties. Nice to be with you again. Thank you. And your book is fabulous as well. So
Oh, thank
both of
you.
us have birthed new babies. So I'm so happy to talk with you today.
Same here. And I mean, first of all, congratulations. It sounds like I've been watching all week. It really seems like this book is so well received. Like people, women, and everyone all over the world are really just embracing the message that you have in this book. So first, congratulations to you. But
Thank you.
I wanted to start really by maybe explaining what was the impetus for writing this book, because it is not for the faint of heart. Like, this is not a like, hey, like, let's talk about women's empowerment. This is like, I'm going to show you your stuff, and if you choose to see it, we can walk on this path together. So walk us through a little bit around what was the impetus for this book writing.
Yeah. So we're talking about this book, A Radical Awakening, Embrace. Oh, I always forget the order. Turn pain into power, embrace your truth, live free. Um, so I think I went through my own personal radical awakening in my mid 40s, and I have worked with so many women, and I saw a thread amongst us all that I've felt this for years, and this was just the right time for me to write about it. And the thread running through has been a constant negation, dimming, servitude to our inner knowing, a constant denial of the truth. And when we do this, we actually co create our own oppression. And I just felt that I needed to help women wake up and myself to the fact that we are the ultimate manifestors of our own destiny. And there's a way to do that. And so this book is not just, yeah, be strong, motivating book. It's really giving you a path as a psychologist, as I would with you if you were working with me. And I take you down your patterns. The first part is called Being Asleep in the Matrix, that we are given messages from culture that are toxic and we need to wake up to that. And then I talk about confronting our shadow, going back and realizing our patterns. Then I talk about sexuality a lot and waking us up as women to our bodies and our beauty. And then I talk about cracking the matrix, which is, you and I talked about on your podcast, all the lies that we've been told about love and marriage and beauty and niceness. And then it's awakening from the matrix, how to create fearless boundaries, embrace your purpose, accountability, your sovereignty. So it's kind of a whole path that I take women on. And really, because I went through that. So I went through it, I take other women through it. So it was time to write the book, with the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter, the pandemic. We women have particularly gone through a hard time. I think it's time for us. Kamala Harris is a vice president. I think it's time now for us women to step up and claim our power. I feel there's the zeitgeist for it.
Absolutely. So I can't agree more with what you're saying. I mean, when we look at some of the stats from the pandemic, women have been, much more affected in terms of having to give up their careers and job losses and finances. And I think that there's been, maybe we haven't necessarily been able to put the words to the way that we've been feeling, but you do this so eloquently. You describe the way that I think most women have felt at some point in their lives without us necessarily having the verbiage around it. So I wanted you to maybe expand. You said, we are our own creators. We are the ultimate alchemists, the manifestors, and we are also our greatest oppressors. Can you expand a little bit for the Bettys and for those of you that are joining in, what that means? Well, how are we our own greatest oppressors and our own greatest co-creators?
Well, we take on the messages of our culture. And so culture is oppressive towards women, people of color, the poor, the disadvantaged. And we take on those messages of perfection. We're supposed to meet a standard of perfection. We're supposed to be always good and kind and sweet. So those are the messages every girl gets, to look a certain way, to act a certain way. Boys don't get it so much. We get it heavy duty, pummeled into us, you know, and we compare ourselves with other women. And there's the standard of flawless youth, which is a lie. And we constantly feel dimmed and dumbed and quietened. And then as we grow up, because we don't realize that all of it is BS, a lie, we thought it was real. We thought we really needed to act like that. And so now we become our own internal oppressors. Nobody needs to tell us. And me too, in my 40s, when I began to shake my marriage up or shake the boat or rock the system, I was terrified, not because I was saying anything wrong or doing anything wrong, but because I wasn't following my mandate to be the good girl, to be the peacemaker, to be the conflict avoider. And so I began to notice, wow, no one is telling me anything, but I'm oppressing myself. And that's where we need to own our own co-creation. When we look in the mirror and we critique ourselves, nobody's in the bathroom with us. That's called co-creating our own oppression. Now we have taken it within ourselves and we're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah. And I think, again, like there's been so many times when I've looked in the mirror and I'm like, this little thing and that, and this little thing and that little thing. And I totally agree. It's only, you know, as we move through becoming awake to some of these, you know, we live in a patriarchal society. I don't think anybody can really deny that. And at many times it is very toxic, and we internalize these messages around our sexuality, around beauty, around youth, around what women should do. We should all get married and we should all have children and it should just be bliss, and we should always have a smile on our face. And what I love that you did, so you architected these archetypes, really, of these different types of women. And, you know, you're going to have to buy the book to read them all in depth. The book, of course, that we're talking about today is called A Radical Awakening, and it's available everywhere that you buy books, online, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, all the places. But can you give us an overview of some of those archetypes, maybe some of the ones that you have seen occur most commonly in your clinical practice?
So the most common archetype for us women is the giver archetype. And under that is the victim. We tend to feel like we're the victim, the martyr, the bleeding empath, and the savior. So when you read more, you'll figure it out. But the names kind of give you an idea. The savior wants to save everyone. I'm guilty of that.
Right.
And then the controller is the perfectionist, the passive aggressive tyrant, the helicopter, you know, hovering and managing everyone's life, and the stoic, the shield, who doesn't want to show any emotion because she's so put together. Right. And then the third category are the takers. And the takers, no one wants to call themselves a taker, but really inside, we're all trained to be takers. Takers are those who live as eternal princesses, divas, children. We're just waiting, you know, and there's a part in all of us that's kind of waiting. Like, when are we going to win the lotto? When are we going to get Prince or Princess Charming in our life to just solve our mysteries? When is Daddy going to come and save us? And that passivity in us is the child, is that the hopeful, the just waiting. And how many years do we spend waiting? You know, I see women just waiting. And, you know, in the pandemic, they've been talking about languishing. You know, this syndrome in the US, at least, where people are languishing, feeling very apathetic. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm trying to shake up in this book. Like, wake up to your patterns, wake up to your dysfunction. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm not happy, because you deserve to push that envelope toward happiness. But don't just say I'm unhappy and wait for it. You have to follow it with actionable, empowered steps.
Right. And I think that the point when we're looking at some of these archetypes is not to be like, oh yeah, that's me, and then sort of have a chuckle. It's to really say, okay, these are some of the patterns, the strategies that I have taken on maybe as a young child or a young woman growing up in the society. And this is how it's showing up in every single vertical of my life. And walk us through, if there's women who are listening to this, who are saying, you know what, I am the giver, I am the martyr, or like me, I am the perfectionist, right? Like I am the one that it's really, really hard for me to make mistakes publicly. And I need everything to sort of look put together all the time. What is the path? Take us on the journey that would be necessary for a woman to start taking back her power. What are how would you begin to counsel someone in that way?
Right. So when you begin to notice that you're a perfectionist, for example, and because of that, you've been unrelentingly critical of yourself, and you've been feeling really crummy or unrelentingly critical of all your life, people in your life, now you can begin to notice how that is a way that you've been using to not feel worthy. You've been in your own loop of endless criticism, unworthiness, more criticism, unworthiness, and you're on this feedback loop and you're stuck. So the next time that perfectionism shows up, you can go, oh my God, I'm doing this again. And in this book, I talk about how you can trace your model, your archetype to your past. I, for one, became a savior because I was rescuing people from a young age. My siblings, my cousins, would come and complain to me, and I felt I had to mediate. My parents would argue, I had to mediate. So it's no wonder I became a therapist, right? So, but I have to check that in me, because I hear people say things that they're not saying. Like I hear them saying, can you help me? And they haven't said it.
Right.
Or I'll hear them saying, can you rescue me? But they haven't said it.
Right.
I have the archetype of being savior, so I cross my line. So when you begin to understand that you are doing much of your own hell, you are creating your own dynamics of dysfunction. Like I had to really realize in my life, no one asked you for help. What are you doing in the basement of that person's house with your sleeves up and helping them clean out the poop from the gutter? Like no one asked you, but you're volunteering. Not because life is cruel or they're so, and then I would complain and get resentful. But I set it up. Or I'll say, do you need help? And of course, then they say yes. Then I'm resentful because I'm helping them. So we set up these dynamics of utter dysfunction because it's our addiction. We're robotic. We don't realize we are on autopilot.
And I think that that's a really good word to describe it. We are really addicted. We become addicted to these neurochemicals and this like cascade, when you're like, I'm going to help this person. I'm going to help them clean out the poop from the gutter or whatever it is. And then you reenact them, or, and I would think you would argue more unconsciously that we repeat these patterns as adults so that we can continue to get that hit of whether it's the dopamine or the serotonin or the oxytocin, whatever it is, whatever neurochemical you're trying to modulate. And so it's really important for us to, identify these archetypes, and they're so well done. But also to say, okay, where is this showing up? So with my interactions with my patients, as you had just mentioned, and then with my friends, and then with my lovers and my partners and my sisters and my brothers and my family. And then that's how we can begin to set boundaries. And your book was so, articulate in that it wasn't like step one, do this, step two. It was really about becoming awake. It was like becoming awake to your patterns, this radical awakening, really, in all forms. So yeah.
So these archetypes become like our second skin, and they cause us to react in particular ways that we can't help. Like there's somebody in your chat, he can't help it, and now he doesn't realize we have to create boundaries against him.
Right.
Because he's been stalking every chat. So lovingly, I'm going to tell him to either have boundaries, or we women are going to create boundaries against him.
Right.
But this is what he can't help it. He's completely lost his control, lost it. And this is what we're doing all over and over. We're just in a loop and cannot press the stop button. We cannot stop ourselves to change our pattern. And then when the boundary gets set for us, we fall apart. So how do boundaries get set for us when we're not paying attention? Like this guy, I'm going to have to report him and put an end to this because he is crossing boundaries now, disturbing the chat. So when other ways that boundaries get set for us are people leave us or our body gives way. That's a huge way for boundaries being set for us. So when we don't pay attention, your body will pay attention for you. Your body's always responding. So mentally, you can pretend and have justifications and rationalize. Your body will give way. And these are the ways that boundaries are being set for us all the time.
Yeah. And I think as women, we're taught not to say anything, right? We allow this predation, this predatory behavior, like the chat and like, other, men making inappropriate comments, and we just sort of take it. And I think that one of the things that you've been so good at is articulating and expressing why we need to be setting boundaries. Like, people cannot know what our boundaries are. Like, I might have another live, and someone might be absolutely fine with some of the comments that are happening in the chat, and someone else might not. So it's important for us as women to know where it is yes up, and then when we cross that line, when it becomes no. And one of the things that you talk about in the book is to understand that, maybe it's a bit controversial and I would love for you to expand on it, is this idea of predator and prey, that just in the animal world, of which we are a part, there are predators and there are preys. And we, people who, animals that prey on other animals. And you never see, I think you said something like in the book, like you never see like deer, like saying, oh God, these like wolves that are chasing me. Like, I can't believe, like, they're so, but they figure out how to deal with it. Right.
Yeah. Well, we need to check. So your first point was we need to check ourselves and check each other so that we can create an environment of safety for our children, for our sisters. So raising my daughter from a young age, I warned her that she could be touched inappropriately by predators, not all men, but some men. I was predated on as a child. So I'm not living under any fantasy that this is not going to happen. And when I prepare her, I tell her, if this happens, you need to step up and be strong in your power and not feel ashamed, guilty, bad, to create a boundary.
Right.
But we're not giving clear messages about boundary setting as women. We're given, maybe not. No, we should be told, if you're not comfortable, you leave the room. If you're not comfortable, you get the other person to leave. Do something to stop it. You don't have to endure anything in silence. And this is how we empower each other. See, now the man said, I'm sorry. Okay, maybe there's some hope. So we have to check each other all the time to make sure that we're letting people know when they're inappropriate, not in a rude way, right? I said it lovelily, but we need to show women to speak up. Don't just allow things to continue, or don't ever let your daughter go into the world thinking she won't be a prey. I was with Oprah on a podcast, and she made me read the section in the book where I talk about, warning your daughters that they could be prey. She felt it was so important. If I remember, it's so important to teach our daughters that this could happen to you. And it sounds like it's a shocking thing to tell our daughters, but it's not. It's empowering them. Just like the gazelle knows the lion may kill it, we need to let our daughters know that they are smaller, they're weaker in physical strength to men, and there could be some men that will be predators. And to our sons, you're right, we need to teach our sons that just because they're stronger doesn't give them a chance to be part of this dynamic.
Yes, and I have two sons, so that's really important for me to raise two young men with emotional intelligence, and to be able to communicate and to be masculine, but not to move into that realm of toxic masculinity where they just take what they want because they can. That's really important. So talk to us a little bit about some of the lies that we are taught as women around motherhood, around our sexuality, around beauty, and around youth. I think that that's important. I mean, all of those four, maybe not, but maybe some of the, let's talk about youth, because I think that is a really big issue for many women. And we look on social media, and I'm going to hang myself out to dry here. I put on makeup for this conversation, because I wanted to present well. But talk to us a little bit about the lies that women sort of internalize around beauty and youth.
Oh, it's so hard. You hit the hardest ones for women, I think. So we've internalized that we need to be flawless and youthful all our lives. It's so embedded in every woman. You can pretend like you don't have an issue. I can pretend I don't have an issue. We all do. I mean, I dye my hair.
Yeah.
I haven't let that go yet, and I want to let it go, but I'm scared because who knows how it's going to grow, right? You're like,
Right.
I can't experiment here. We don't have time. Like it could just be all shocking, right? So when I'm on
Right.
an island, I'll do it for 3 years, then I can do it. So we're afraid of this natural aging. And women in prehistoric times were just naked. So their boobs hung down and everybody was with their hair and everybody looked pretty much not attractive. And
Right.
so the sexual climate was probably quite tame because they were all looking like hairy and whatever. But now we've actually upped the sexual climate and made it worse for ourselves by looking
Right.
amazing.
Right.
Right? We made it worse for ourselves now because we all look pretty amazing. But we are trying to look amazing and trying to look young. And while we may subscribe to Botox or this or that, each one makes their choice. All I ask women is really sit with it, really, because right now we have a smorgasbord of candy available. So how much, how far, how often, when, right? Sit with it before you just give in, and tolerate. Like I look at my face, I 100% see wrinkles, flashing. And
Right.
I'm learning to tolerate my face with it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, why do I need to look flawless, like no wrinkles?
Right.
That's untenable. But when you see other women looking all like stretched out, you're like, oh, I can look like that too.
Yes.
Oh, so, we women are doing it to ourselves. We are taking in these prescriptions and making it worse for ourselves, really.
Yeah. And, when we were talking about being the prey, right, being, having this predatory behavior, as you mentioned, when you're, and this can be, I want to be careful with my words here because you always want to, feel your best and look your best, right? But if you are obsessed with this idea of youth and you do everything, like you're talking about your wrinkles, like I'm noticing, like I'm getting a little jowl action here, right? Like we all have our things, right? So, but if you're obsessed with that all the time, and that's all that you think about, and rather than focusing on some of the other verticals in your life, like your intellectual life, your emotional intelligence, things that bring you joy, if you're only concerned with the exterior, then when we talk about this pursuit of, embodiment, when we talk about this pursuit of being happy, and you don't have to be happy all the time, but being happy in your own skin, it'll never happen because you're going to be a year older every year. You're going to have a new wrinkle every year. There'll be more jowls every year, like that's always going to be there. And, we send the wrong message, I think, in some ways to men who are highly visual, that that's all that we are. That's all that we are is a pretty face, or that's all that we are is like the dyed hair
But
and the
that's what I'm
lipstick and the
saying.
whatever. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We're giving them what they want, and then we're complaining that we're giving them what they want more.
Right. Right.
Right? So there's a fine line between feeling good for ourselves, but then becoming slaves to that, and then training our men to never see 50-year-old normal women.
Right.
Right? So we train
Right.
them to only see 30-year-old faces, all like
Mm-hmm.
scrunched up or stretched out, whatever. And we're not training them to deal with it.
Right. So tell me what you hope for this book. So if you were, I always think of, my book is obviously something I wrote, but it is something that I would like to think of as a child that was birthed into the world and is going to grow up and have its own impact on society. And I like to think about that not in like my book that I wrote, but the book that's out there that I contributed, and then it's going to kind of do its own thing. What is your hope for your book, baby? If we were to come back here a year from now and say, what did the Radical Awakening book impact on the female psyche and on society? What is your hope?
Well, I do have a big desire, but I'm not attached to it, that people do have a radical awakening, that women do find their voice, that this does turn the key, that this does open the cage. I hope it gives them permission to break free You know, it has a big vision for liberation, and I won't be shy about saying it. Like, there's a big, big ask, a big demand that, come on, let's wake up, shake it up, ignite yourself, and take the key, which is in your hand, you just can't see it, and turn that latch and break free. And so it's going to shake up the system. My books typically do. They're going to transform the paradigm, and hopefully, you know, and I, like you, I also think it should do its own thing. I can't control it like a helicopter parent, but I need to release it. But I do have a vision for it to, when women read it, that they're so moved, that they can so hear the soul of their own authentic voice, that they're going to answer the call. They're going to answer it. Like, this is like 380 pages of me saying, come on, do you hear it? Do you hear it? Answer, answer. You can do this, baby. And by the end, I hope they just do it. And I give them the tools, I give them the inspiration, I give them my life, my story, my tears. And I hope that through this, they can break free. So this is what we're talking about. You
A
don't have your
radical
copy yet,
awakening.
Steph?
I don't have the hardcover yet. It hasn't arrived yet. It was supposed to, we ordered it and it's not here yet, but I know.
But I sent you one too, so I'm going to follow up on it.
Oh, okay, great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
We'll have 2 copies, one for me and one to give away.
Yeah.
So it's on Amazon. It's tell everybody where they can find it. And I know, do you have a course that goes along with it as well?
Yes,
Do you want to tell people about that?
10-day course starting on Sunday, and it's called A Radical Awakening. Go to aradicalawakening.com to buy a book or the course, or go to Amazon, Audible. It's on Audible right now. So Radical Awakening. Thank you, Stephanie, for supporting my work and being there as a sister. And I really adore you and everything you do. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. Love you very much. We'll talk soon.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.